and they now face another of the World Cup outsiders, Kenya, once again in Colombo, with star fast bowler Lasith Malinga likely to return after injury. Sri Lankan coach Trevor Bayliss is confident that his side will bounce back.
Our guys know that we can play a lot better than that, and that we have played a lot better than that in the last 2 years. And I'm sure they'll be out to prove and show how good they can play in the next match. And Kenya tomorrow, I'm sure they would like to put in a better performance than they've put in over the last couple of games as well. So certainly our guys won't be taking them lightly, that's for sure.
Now a match has just finished in the English Premier League. Stoke City have drawn 1-1 at home against West Bromwich Albion. As I've said, the match has just finished. West Brom sub Carlos Vela saved them a point with a late equaliser. Stoke had taken the lead thanks to a Robbie Delap goal 8 minutes into the second half, and a point was enough to take West Brom out of the bottom three. Now there's a huge game on Tuesday with defending champions Chelsea at home against the current leaders Manchester United. Victory would take Chelsea into the top four, but preparations for the game have been overshadowed by a police investigation into defender Ashley Cole, who shot and wounded a work placement student with an air rifle at the Chelsea training ground. Manager Carlo Ancelotti says Cole will play against United, and the club are taking disciplinary action against the England fullback.
Obviously, we are not happy of what happened, but I have spoken with him. He was really disappointed about this. He said sorry, he made a mistake, it was an accident, and now obviously we are taking a proper action, but tomorrow he will play, and I think that he is in focus to play a good game.
Another famous left-back in the news, Roberto Carlos, once of Real Madrid and the Brazilian national team, landing in the Chechen capital Grozny ahead of his debut for his latest side, Anzi. Carlos, who is now 37 years old, has signed a 2.5-year deal for Anzi and will make his debut in a cup game against Zenit St. Petersburg. Finally, the new World Golf rankings are out, with Martin Kaymer officially taking over from Lee Westwood as the new world #1. This despite the German's defeat to Luke Donald in the final of the World Match Play in Arizona. Kaymer overtook Westwood in the rankings after winning his semi-final on Saturday. Donald's victory, meanwhile, moves the Englishman up to #3 in the world, with Graham McDowell 4th and Tiger Woods down to an unaccustomed 5th. That's all the sport. Back to you.
Thanks, Stuart. A British film about a monarch's speech impediment has emerged as the biggest winner in this year's Oscars.
And the Oscar goes to The King's Speech, Ian Canning.
The film's lead, Colin Firth, also walked away with the Best Actor trophy, but the warmest applause of the night was reserved for Natalie Portman, who won Best Actress for her portrayal of a troubled ballet dancer in the film Black Swan. She fell in love with the choreographer on the set of the film, and they are expecting a baby boy this spring. Stay with us here on Al Jazeera. We'll update the headlines right after the break. See you in a moment.
Hello again. It's still very cold for many of us in the northern parts of Asia. The winds are still coming down from the north, dragging in that fresher air. We've got a lot of cloud, a few outbreaks of snow, but it's mostly just going to be the temperature you'll really notice as we head through Wednesday. A top temperature in Tokyo this time just of 8 degrees. Now, if we see any wintry weather, that's likely to be along the western coast of Japan here further east. There's a better chance of a dry day and maybe a little bit of sunshine coming through as well. Now, some of that cold weather is filtering further south as well. So Shanghai will have a fresher day, no higher than 8 degrees here. For Hong Kong, for the time being, it's actually quite warm. We'll get to around 25 degrees, that's 77 in Fahrenheit. But I think for Wednesday, we won't get above 19. A bit further south, and we've seen torrential downpours in the southern parts of the Philippines. That area of wet weather is now pushing a little bit further northwards. So the southeast, where we saw the worst of the rains, it will be a lot drier here for Tuesday, just more isolated showers to deal with here. Java, though, that's still going to be very wet. Even Jakarta For Australia, the wettest weather here is still in the far north. We've got one area of low pressure there across the Northern Territory and another one over Western Australia. Lots of rain pushing its way further southwards as we head through Wednesday. Heavy downpours here.
To invest in a country that offers 100% and more tax deductions on R&D expenditures, please push the button. For more power to your global business, invest in Turkey.
If you're a Nokia user, you can download AlJazeera's news widget from Nokia's Ovies store. The news widget, available on compatible Nokia devices, gives users quick and easy access to real-time news updates from AlJazeera English. See the world in real time. AlJazeera Mobile.
Colonel Gaddafi's brutal attacks on his own people are unacceptable and will not be tolerated.
Ratcheting up the pressure against Libya, the U.S. tells Muammar Gaddafi to surrender power now. I'm Arund Naidu. You're watching Al Jazeera live from Doha and Washington, D.C. Also on the program, air attack on AlJazeera. Residents claim the Libyan Air Force bombs an ammunition dump east of Tripoli.
I'm Jane Dutton in Washington, where senior officials are sending a clear message to Gaddafi's regime.
Now is the time for Colonel Gaddafi to step aside to prevent further bloodshed.
The U.S. government repeats that all options remain on the table. At the top of their list, a no-fly zone.
Banned from travel and his assets seized, Egypt's top prosecutor makes a move on ousted President Hosni Mubarak. And sentenced to life in prison, a former security officer from the United Kingdom is convicted of murder in Iraq. Pressure on Muammar Gaddafi to resign is gathering momentum as the international community tells him it's time to go. But the Libyan leader is showing no sign of heeding their calls as he continues to clamp down on protesters in an attempt to quash any dissent against his rule. It comes as the international community meets in Geneva to discuss the ongoing crisis in Libya. Dan Nolan reports.
Panic sets in on a highway near the eastern Libyan town of AlJazeera. Anti-government fighters try to divert traffic after what they say was an aerial attack from Muammar Gaddafi's forces.
Jets are bombing us. In every raid they dropped 4 bombs. They attacked AlJazeera from 4 different locations.
There's another explosion in the military. Sweatina military. You can see the smoke from there.
These pictures were filmed by Associated Press on Monday. Witnesses said the target was an ammunition dump taken over by opposition forces. As they wait with rocket-propelled grenades for a follow-up attack, a former Air Force pilot who's joined the rebel ranks made this plea to control Colonel Gaddafi.
Whether it is the European Union or the Arabs or America or even Russia, we ask them to just shut down this man's airspace. We are capable of taking him out by ourselves, but we are only requesting the international community to enforce a no-fly zone.
And he may be getting his wish, with the Pentagon announcing on Monday it's, quote, moving US warships closer to Libya in case they are needed. It's the kind of air power required to enforce a no-fly zone over a country where fierce ground battles continue. This amateur video was uploaded on social media on Monday and is said to show fresh battles at Misrata Airport, a sprawling airbase that each side now partly controls. Al Jazeera cannot independently verify it or another uploaded video said to show the aftermath of battles at the same airport on Sunday. Misrata is 200 kilometres to the east of Tripoli, its strategic value possibly best explained by the huge amount of ammunition left behind. Another key airbase at Benin is now firmly in the hands of the opposition, with all Air Force staff said to have joined the uprising.
The whole base responded to my call to join the People's Revolution. We have great staff. As military personnel, we want to be clear that this is not a military coup. We are not leading anything. This is a people's revolution led by the youth. Our role is to protect and support it. That's our main aim.
Away from the headline towns, it appears that little places too are quietly realigning themselves. This Facebook video is said to be from Zintan. It's southwest of Tripoli, where Gaddafi has assumed control for decades. Dan Nolan, Al Jazeera.
Now, it's not only the European Union that's turning up the pressure on Libya. US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton told the UN Human Rights Council that Gaddafi must go. And now China and Russia have added their voices, calling for the Libyan leader to be prosecuted for war crimes. Nick Spicer has this report from Geneva.
Behind the concern and outrage, there was also a certain level of surprised satisfaction here on Monday. Without a single voice of dissent, the Human Rights Council had asked for Libya to be suspended and ordered an international investigation into the crackdown.
The international community is speaking with one voice, and our message is unmistakable. These violations of universal rights are unacceptable and will not be tolerated.
Even the countries who usually put state sovereignty over human rights lined up in agreement over the weekend, approving sanctions against Colonel Gaddafi and his entourage, as well as possible prosecution for war crimes.
And so, to Colonel Gaddafi, we say this: the Libyan people are saying go, the people of the Arab world are saying go, the peoples of the entire world are saying go, and for the sake of humanity, go now.
But if there is rare diplomatic unity over Libya, there is also recognition that much more needs to be done, that this is also a humanitarian crisis. The head of the International Red Cross told Al Jazeera that some of the elementary rules of armed conflict are not being followed.
We have seen that. We have credible report about ambulances being used to carry weapons or things like that, and that's a very major concern, because I think we think that's a question of life and death. Medical staff, ambulances need to be respected. They need to be able to do their work. It's not the case so far in Libya, especially not in the western part of Libya. And I really call to every people involved in violence to be able to really allow us to do our work and to allow all humanitarians to do their work in Libya. That's very important.
The U.S. is pushing Europe to take a lead role in the crisis, and the EU on Monday agreed to apply the UN sanctions. There is a recognition as well that the humanitarian and refugee crisis developing in Libya could affect Europe.
We're trying to respond in real time to the crisis and, of course, to avoid the civil war that we fear, and making contingency plans to respond to the potential flow of refugees to neighbouring and to European countries.
Sanctions and rhetoric, however rapid, will only take the world so far. Already some are saying military action may be needed, a far bigger challenge if the international community is to stay united. Nick Spicer, Al Jazeera, Geneva.
Our correspondent, Hoda Abdelhamid, has the latest from the city of Benghazi in eastern Libya, which is now in the hands of the opposition.
People here in the east are really doing their best to try to organize themselves at different levels, whether it's the administration level or trying to bring some sort of normalcy back to the cities here, trying to keep the security very, very tight. At the moment, everything is at a standstill. Schools and universities are still shut down. And people do feel that at the moment they might be at a sort of a deadlock. They don't know how things will unfold, whether the uprising will keep its momentum or whether the violent confrontations that are happening in the west of the country will make many people shy away. So certainly they're here in the east looking at the west to try to figure out what is the next step. Many people here say that they want to go to the west of the country to help out there, but it is a very difficult journey for them. It is also a very risky journey for them. They'll have to go through the hometown of Gaddafi. Gaddafi. That means they will have to meet face to face with some of his elite paramilitary forces, which are much better equipped and much better trained than the regular army or the regular security forces. Now, on the reaction to the international community, they have welcomed the condemnations coming from the international